Hey all, welcome back to the Highland Greenhouse here at Carlton Carnivores. I've got another spotlight for you. This is another species that does not grow in this greenhouse here, but grows into the miniature Mediterranean climate greenhouse that I have, where there's no room for filming around there, so I bring it in here. We have a special sundew spotlight for today, and this is one of the species in a group that has generally proven extremely challenging for me, but it's one of the few that has been just reliably bulletproof in general, and probably related to some of its natural habitat traits. But this is Drosera menziesii, sometimes commonly known as the pink rainbow, although usually, at least among carnivorous plant growers, you'll just hear it referred to as its scientific name, Drosera menziesii. This is an erect growing tuberous sundew from southwestern Australia, and it's actually quite widespread throughout the southwestern corner of that continent. It's not particularly picky about where it grows so long as it's a winter wet area that gets pretty wet in winter. These guys will grow in flooded lowlands, along streamways, sometimes in areas that actually become submerged in water for periods at a time. And that really, really wet winter habitat preference is actually one of the things that separates this species from some of its closer relatives like Basifolia and Thysanocephala, which tend to grow in slightly drier environments than these guys do. But they are, again, like all tuberous sundews, they are a winter-growing species. So during summer down there, things dry out really badly. The soil may be literally almost completely dry up to several inches down. And so they form little tiny tubers or corms several inches down in the soil that are just above the kind of continual moisture level, so they never quite desiccate out, but they're dry enough as well so that they don't risk rotting out either. Now this species, on average, in the wild, it tends to grow about a foot tall, so just a little taller than this plant right here. And in the wild also, they tend to develop this really rich scarlet blood red coloration that this one is just starting to develop because it grows right up against the lights that it's underneath here. And so in the wild, they stand out at quite a distance. This little erect, sometimes branching plant, especially up at the top. You can see a few branches on this one, in fact. And those are all brilliantly red colored. Now in cultivation, where the lighting may be just a little bit lower, you may actually get it to grow up to 2-3 feet in length. And they'll tend to be a little bit greener, although usually at least a healthy plant will still have kind of a pinkish tinge to its tentacles. Now this species, when it first sprouts, like most tuberous sundews, it will form a small little basal rosette of leaves, but then once it's a mature plant, every season after that, it just about immediately goes into its erect growth habit. And down at the base of the plant here, oftentimes there will be a major gap between the soil surface and the first leaves. And those first leaves will often be fairly separated out, fairly well spaced apart as well. Unlike some of its other relatives like Basifolia, where it has a bunch of densely compacted leaves right near the base of that stem first before spreading out. These guys, they're really sparse down at the bottom, and most of their leaves are higher up. Each leaf is circular and peltate. It's actually slightly bell-shaped, and they tend to face outward or hang downward as they wait for prey to pass. And so it just looks like a stem just kind of full of tiny little sticky bells sticking all over the place. And that's a pretty normal shape for a lot of erect growing tuberous sundews as well. They've got those circular peltate bell-shaped leaves, very different looking from any other sundews really anywhere else in the world even. So quite unique. And then of course where it gets the name pink rainbow from is what this guy has developed right at the end of its stem here. Now it's started to close up already, but you will see in the close-up here a look at what this guy actually really looks like when fully open. They will produce one to several, sometimes up to a dozen, more than 1.5 inches wide, brilliantly pink flowers. The green sepals down below have little fringed edges and are covered in tiny little glandular hairs. That's also another distinctive trait of this species. And then big ruffled pink petals as well. Now, like most tuberous sundews, these guys do not self-pollinate. They are not like the peltata complex, which mostly are able to self and produce seeds. These guys, you do need a separate clone in order to produce seeds. So because all of my plants originated from one seed, one seedling that survived a while ago, they are all the same clone. So even if multiples were blooming at the same time, I would not be able to cross them and produce seeds. But in the wild, where you have multiple colonies, multiple clones growing in relatively close proximity, you'll find small hoverflies and bees and other pollinating insects. They'll visit one flower, get covered in the pollen there, and then go to one on a colony a little further away and transfer the pollen there, and you'll get seeds. This species is relatively easy to germinate from seeds as well. In the wild, of course, those seeds will ripen and release at about when summer starts, so the plants are dying back, everything is dry and it's hot, so they'll just sit on the soil surface for a little while in that hot and dry environment and wait for winter to come, at which point they sprout. So because these guys are a very wet growing plant in the wild and they're also very widespread in their habitat, they don't really have a picky soil preference necessarily as long as it's still relatively well drained. And because they're easy to sprout from seeds, this is one of the better erect growing species to actually try growing as one of your beginner tuberous plants if you want to get into this group. So to grow them, you want to, for most tuberous sundews, the average mix is usually like a 3-to-1 sand or perlite sand mix to peat moss, so that it is very gritty, it's very well draining, it's very sandy, but it's still just got enough to hold in a good amount of moisture as well when it's the wet season. Now, in summer, of course, that dries out almost completely. You might give it a slight watering once every 1 to 2 weeks just to make sure it doesn't completely dry out, but it never gets more than slightly humid in the soil at that time of year. In winter, you increase the watering frequency, you spritz it a little bit, maybe once every couple of days, so that you start to increase the moisture level, and eventually you will start to see little tiny sprouts come sticking out of the soil. At that point, you can start making it really moist. You can set, if you have a draining container, you can simply set that in a tray and fill it up to an inch or so in depth, and you can have it at that level all winter long. Or in, like I have, a lot of non-draining pots, you simply make sure that there's plenty of moisture in there for these guys throughout the season. As soon as the soil surface starts to dry, you soak it down again, and then you should see all the little sprouts starting to come up. Each tuber generally will make one single stem. So at the start of the year, if you only have one tuber, you will get one small stem that sticks up out of the ground. You start feeding those leaves fairly early, because the more these guys get fed, the more likely it is they will produce their flowers, and the more likely it is that they will start producing all their daughter tubers as well, because once they're mature and once they've started siphoning energy back down to recreate their own tuber, they will make little offshoots very close to that main tuber, little stolons that go out a centimeter to an inch or two and form a small daughter tuber that then will start growing as well and collecting its own energy. You can actually see you have like the main vine here, but then you have this little tiny guy right there that is starting to grow up. That is a daughter tuber that has just formed and sprouted its own little stem. So feeding that will ensure that develops into its own healthy, beautiful tuber for next year. Now, during winter, you want to give these guys as much light as you can during the correct photo period, so up to full sun again, because these guys are full sun plants in the wild, or at least the strongest artificial lighting that you can provide them. But you do not want it to be a long photo period either. So a lot of greenhouses and stuff might have kind of a constant year-round photo period of between 12 and 16 hours. A lot of my Nepenthes and such will grow under similar levels as that. But with these guys, you want to make sure their winter photo period, the actual amount of sunlight they're getting, is generally less than 10 hours a day, because these guys grow fairly far south in the hemisphere, and they don't expect long day periods. And in fact, if the day length gets too long, that may trigger them to go dormant early, even if all the other conditions are good for them to keep growing. The other thing is these guys don't want to get warm really either. Daytime temperatures that don't much exceed 70, 75 degrees Fahrenheit. They can occasionally tolerate mild frosts, but it's best not to get that cold either. So preferentially for these guys, have temperatures that maybe during the nighttime may drop down into the 50s or maybe the upper 40s Fahrenheit. And during the day, be around maybe 60 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit so that it's cool, but it's very, very bright light, very sunny. So they have plenty of energy to take in during that short growing period in order to survive the longer day hot summer. And then, of course, if you are feeding them well enough, you may eventually get sometimes multiple branches off of a single plant, and you may get their flowers at the top. Now, again, if you have just a single tuber that you're working with, that's just going to be kind of an attractive ornamental aspect. If you start from seeds and you are able to make multiple clones and you can keep track of which clones are which, then when those flower, you can cross those together and get seeds. And in cultivation, the seeds, it's as simple as sow them on the soil surface maybe about a month before fall and winter really start to move in. So late August, early September here in the northern hemisphere is the best time generally to sow them. You simply sow them on the soil surface when it's still hot and dry. Leave them for at least a couple of weeks before you start watering in while it's still a little bit warm. And then as it cools down, as fall and winter move in, those seeds will recognize the temperature change and the increase in moisture, and they will sprout. This species does not need a lot of finagling like some other tuberous species do, which may benefit from smoke treatment or gibberellic acid or scarification even. These guys just sow, leave for a couple months, and then start watering in and you should get sprouts. Now again, once these guys are really well fed and springtime is starting to approach, after they've done flowering and everything, again, keep feeding them fairly heavily throughout this period so that they have the energy to form good healthy tubers and daughter tubers. Small fruit flies, crushed bloodworms, fish food flakes. If you have fungus gnats in the house, just set this guy near where they're living and it'll catch a bunch of those as well. But come springtime and into early summer, when it starts to warm up and the day lengths get longer, they will start to die back. And as soon as that happens, stop watering, because you want them to die back fully and you want that soil to dry out healthily but slowly, so that they're able to consolidate all their energy in that tuber, and then the tuber does not desiccate during that period. Once summer comes, again, water once every maybe couple of weeks just to make sure there's a little bit of moisture down in here and it doesn't completely dry out, and then the next season will come through. Now, if you get this going for a couple of years, of course, you will eventually have a colony full of these stems and the beautiful colors. If you have nice strong lights or sunlight that you can put them in during winter, like if you're on a Mediterranean habitat like the Southern California coast, you may be able to grow these guys in the or outdoors without much issue at all. But of course, in a more cold environment like I am at, give them as much light as possible indoors for that best color. Now that is about all that I have for this species. Certainly if there's anything that I've missed or if you have questions, make sure to leave them in the comments below the video here. If you enjoy watching educational videos like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel, give a like to the video, and if you know somebody else who might enjoy learning about this species, certainly share the video with them so that they can learn as well. But if you'd like to see more of what's coming up, I am always doing more educational videos like this, little spotlights, the wildlife videos. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on the black bell so you don't miss anything coming up. I also have my blog and database on my website at carltoncarnivores.com, where you can learn more about the plants and animals that I work with, or follow me on social media, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, PixelFed, etc., where I'm also always sharing photos and video tidbits and such about these guys. Now, the raising of these plants and the editing of these videos and so on, it does take a lot of time and money to keep up with. So if you'd like to help support this channel in a more financial manner, watching the videos does help, but we are not quite at monetization yet. You can buy some of the plants and such, merchandise as well, that I have available on my website shop at carltoncarnivores.com. Or you can become a Patreon member where you get early access to these videos. You get access to the monthly seed contest that I do as well, where you may get access to seeds that I don't offer in the shop or that might be particularly expensive in the shop, and you get a chance at them for much less. There's also a few other kickbacks there as well. But if you don't want to do a monthly subscription type thing, you can also do one-time donations at places like coffee.com, or simply contact me for direct PayPal information as well. I can do that. Links for most of these things will be in the video description below. But until next time, I'm Hawken Carlton, and this is Carlton Carnivores.